Hello and welcome. We have the panel Agents in Business, and I know a lot of you have been excited about this one, so let's go ahead and jump in with a few introductions so we can get to know our panelists and where they're agented at. So first up we have Idris Gray, pronouns they, she, writes multicultural speculative fiction and queer contemporary romance. They have published on Radish, Lore, and Amazon Bella, among other platforms. They joined Wattpad in 2013 and are represented by Claire Friedman at Inkwell Literary Management. Tamara Lush writes steamy romance on Wattpad and is traditionally published in the mystery genre. Her book Drive, a new adult romance set in the high-stakes world of auto racing, will be published by Wattpad Books in March of 2022. She is represented by Jill Marcel of Marcel Lyon Literary Agency. And then we also have, and she'll be joining us shortly, barring some connection issues, Jane Pedden writes contemporary romances and thrillers and has published books with Entangled Publishing, Mr. Media Books, Wattpad Paid Stories, Radish Fiction, and Amazon Bella. And Jane joined Wattpad in 2018, and she's represented by Elizabeth Winnick, Rubenstein at Macintosh and Otis. So we've got several different agencies, several different writers here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's see. For our first question, I'd like to start by asking each of you how you found your agent. Idris, do you want to start us? Idris, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I did it. I knew I would.
So actually, my story is super unusual. I've been on Wattpad since 2013. Won my first Wattie in 2015, and my agent found me on Wattpad. Anyone who's been on Wattpad knows there's something called poachers. So let's just get that out of the way. I thought she was a poacher. I thought she was like, kind of a scam artist. Don't tell her I said that. And so she was like, hey, I really like your stuff. Your Wattie winner and some other stories I had posted. Why don't you send me something? And I was like, is she legit? I even asked Wattpad because I was like, is this, legit? And they were like, sounds like a scam. And I was like, oh God. So I emailed her and she had a legit email at Inkwell and everything. But I wasn't confident enough in my work to go for it. So I waited 4 years and my mom was like, go write that agent back, write her back right now. And I was like, I'm not ready. But last year, I guess I kind of hit that tipping point where I was like, I really want to do this as a job. So I reached out to her and said, hey, I know it's been 4 years since we spoke, but would you still be interested in representing me? And she said, yes, please send me what you have. And I did. And I don't even think it was 2 weeks before I was signing with her. So yeah, that's my story for how I found Claire Friedman at Inkwell.
That is definitely a unique story, a really cool one. Tamara, what do you have on that?
How I found my agent had a lot of twists and turns. I actually started querying my first romance novel in 2014, and I had 3 offers on it from small presses. And so I met my first agent. I've had 2 agents. I met my first agent when she came to visit at a Romance Writers of America local meeting. And I met her and sent her my stuff and said, I have some offers. And she made the offer of representation. And she represented me with Wattpad contracts and my cozy mystery books. And then in August of this year, she said that she was stepping down from representing people for health reasons. And so that kind of sent me into a little bit of a tailspin. And I had to find another agent. And a friend of mine who is with a pretty top agent, probably the top agent in romance and mystery, suggested me, and I was accepted by her, Jill Marcel. So now I'm represented by Jill Marcel. She handles most of everything at the moment, everything that the initial agent didn't, because she still handles those contracts that we signed together. But my new agent handles mostly my cozy mystery and some Wattpad stuff as well.
So you've got a lot of agent experience then. Okay, Jane, do you have anything to say about how you found your agent?
Yes, like Tamara, there was a connection with a writing organization, the same one actually, the Romance Writers of America, and they would have a national conference every year. And one of the things they featured was you could sign up for pitches with agents and with editors. And so I was looking for an agent at that time, and I had researched one, Elizabeth Winnick Rubenstein at Macintosh and Otis, which is a very old New York agency. So I signed up for a pitch session with her. that year the conference was in Orlando, and there was some sort of weather obstacle, and she and other agents from New York never made it to the conference. So I found out, the morning of my pitch session, as I was nervously practicing my pitch in my head, that this agent wasn't going to be there. So what I did was I followed up with her after the conference. I sent her an email. I said I had been one of the people who signed up to meet with you, and was sorry you couldn't make it. And I was wondering if I put a little blurb in about my book and said I was wondering if you'd be interested in looking at it. And she said, yes, send me the first 3 chapters. And I did. And then, some time went by because this is not a fast process. And meanwhile, I had another book that won a writing contest, and I followed up with her again. And I said, oh, just checking in to see if you'd had a chance to review my material. By the way, I have another book that just won a romance writing contest. And, just wanted to let you know that. And she got back to me and said, oh, well, we're not sure about the one you sent before, but send me the one that just won the contest. And I sent that to her, and based on that, she made an offer to represent me. And probably I don't think that would have happened if she hadn't not had her flight down from New York, because it gave me a chance to really open up a dialogue with her.
Fair enough. So we've got 3 different experiences here today. That's pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Idris, could you share with us what having an agent is more important, and what role the agent plays in dealing with publishers and helping an author build their career?
So basically for me, my agent helps me in that she can talk to people I can't reach. She can enter into dialogues with publishers who might be less inclined to negotiate with me. I've been writing a long time, and I've been in publishing sort of peripherally in other ways for a few years now. But she knows people. She started as a literary agent assistant and I believe as an intern, but don't quote me on that, and worked her way up. And I've entered into different contracts with Wattpad and otherwise over the years without assistance. And this is, again, not a snipe at anyone I've signed with, but on terms that haven't always been great for me. But when I signed with Claire to have her represent me, I had her actually go back to my contracts and look at them and really highlight what was good for me, what wasn't, and how I can do things differently going forward. And on my behalf, she negotiated some changes. And I think that it allowed organizations I've worked with to take me a little more seriously, which is not fair, by the way, but I recognize it as the way this industry is run. Because if someone who is from an agency that does quote unquote serious work in traditional publishing wants to represent me, then that makes me look more legitimate. So that's the 2 things she really does for me. She negotiates on my behalf, both past and present and future. And also she sort of legitimizes my efforts in traditional publication. Obviously the other things I can handle on my own. So I think that answered the question, hopefully. Some of it.
Yeah, yes, I think it did. Does anyone else have anything else they want to touch on that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of jump off on that, what my agent does is she has the contacts. She knows the people at publishing houses. I mean, publishing is, especially traditional publishing, it is about who you know, and she has the contacts. So that is I don't have the contacts. So that's very invaluable. She also helps me, especially in terms of I also write cozy mysteries under a pen name, Tara Lush. And she's helping me sort of guide my career and telling me what the trends are. Like, for instance, in cozy mysteries, publishers right now aren't buying a lot of bakery mysteries. So because of that, I'm not going to pitch, he told me that, I'm not going to pitch a bakery mystery because I know that publishers aren't really interested in them right now. There's a lot of them and a lot of them have been published. So she knows the trends in publishing, which is really important in genre fiction in ways that I don't, because I'm not out there talking to other professionals.
Right, very fair. Jane, anything, or would you like to go on to the next question? I can start with you there.
Just quickly, the echoing what Tamara and Idris both said, who people know. I mean, I really wanted an agent in New York City. And I mean, she has lunch with editors and she gets information about, again, not just what's trending or, yeah, I mean, she was having lunch one time and on a completely different topic, and an editor brought up, oh, I'm kind of looking for this type of book. And she said, I have a client who wrote a book like that. And yeah, I mean, it's just an opportunity that might not have been aware of otherwise.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. I think you guys are all about on the same page on that. A lot of benefits. Tamara, let's see. Do you have any advice on what happens when the relationship with an agent isn't working out?
That's an interesting question. My first agent and we had and I love her. We had a brief period where we broke up. I basically decided that I didn't need an agent because I was traditionally published. Initially I was traditionally published. And at the time I was self-publishing also in romance. She hadn't been able to sell my book, Constant Craving, the book that ended up being a finalist in the Rita Awards after I self-published it. And now it has 5.5 million reads on Wattpad. She wasn't able to sell that. And it had nothing to do with her. It had to do with the market and publishers and their narrow definition of what they wanted. That doesn't mean a book isn't good, however, and you need to remember that just because an agent doesn't sell your book, or if you're not picked up by an agent, has nothing to do with your quality. It could have everything to do with the subjective nature of the industry. But anyway, she wasn't able to sell it. I was going more indie, and I was going more in the Wattpad Radish direction at that time. And so I thought, I don't really need an agent. I'm not interested in being traditionally published in romance. So we split up, but we remained friends. And then when I wrote A Cozy Mystery, I went back to her and said, hey, I've got this cozy mystery. I have some interest from a publisher. Will you shop it around? And she said yes. And so we signed back up together. And I would have stayed with her because I love her. Amanda Luke from Spencer Hill Associates, awesome person. It was only because she stopped repping people that I ended up not being her client. So, but there are people who, don't work, sometimes it doesn't work, just like any relationship. Sometimes it doesn't work or you don't mesh with that person. And in any good agent contract, there should be a clause. And I think that Jane can talk about this a little more, but in any agent contract, there should be a clause that spells out how you can break that contract or how they can break the contract. And maybe Jane has a little more about that, but I think that that's something that you should really be aware of, that you should be able to get out of it. It's not the Hotel California. It's not like you can never leave. You can get out of it.
Yeah, Jane, did you have anything you wanted to add touching on that?
Yeah, it sounds very cynical, but going on the sort of relationship theme, think about the divorce before you get married is kind of my advice. You need to have a contract. Look at the contract because you want it to be clear on what do you need to do if you want to end this relationship. How much notice? There should be a number of days notice you give. And what happens to books that your agent had already submitted somewhere? If they're out on submission, when you sever the relationship with the agent, what happens? And what happens to books that agent sold for you? Is the agent going to get a commission forever, even if the book later that the agent sold then later goes on to foreign sales or some other medium? What would be your rights if the agent sold a book for you and later, Wattpad Studios wants to make a movie deal with you? Is your agent in on that, even though she's not your agent anymore? All these answers should be in your contract, and it's way, way better to have it. And I know this because I'm also a lawyer, and you want the contract to spell these things out. No matter how happy you are with this agent, circumstances can change. And it's better to have it clear. Look at Tamara's situation. It wasn't that she had a bad agent. It was just a change in circumstances.
Yeah,
better.
Jane and I are friends in real life. We live in the same city. So when I was changing agents, Jane and I had this whole discussion, and she asked me, okay, what happens with that book that you were just pitching? Who gets that book? Like, she asked very specific questions about what happens with the books that I've sold and what happens with the books that were on submission at the time of the agent change. And so I was able to go back and ask, different questions. And asking questions is completely normal. Don't feel like you are asking stupid questions. And if an agent makes you feel like you're asking stupid questions or discourages questions or makes you feel uncomfortable, then they probably aren't the agent for you.
It's a big red flag.
To sum it up, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Anything else on that, or would you guys like to move on?
I'm ready to move on. That's cool.
We've got more questions. Okay. All right. This one I'm going to do for Jane. Jane, how does a writer even start the search for an agent?
Okay, I love this question.
I know you do.
I have a lot of ideas on this. First thing you want to do is consider your genre and your market. Where, what genre are you writing in, and where do you want to be published? And are you looking for one of the big traditional publishers? Are you looking, is what you really have in mind some kind of a movie deal down the road? Would you rather work with a small press? Do you want to be, in like Wattpad, Radish, those types of platforms? So figure that out first. Then you want to research agents who are in that space, agents who know what, who those publishers are and who know the type of book. How do you do that? Okay, well, one thing I really recommend is go to Publishers Marketplace website. There is so much information there, and you can search it for free. If you click on the tab that says agents, it lists hundreds and hundreds of agents, and it will tell you the date they last updated their listing there, and you click on their name, and it will have all sorts of information from them about what type of books they want to represent and how they want to work with clients and what sales they've had. There's tons of information. Also, sign up for free for something called Publisher's Lunch. And you'll get an email every day that tells you about recent deals and news in the industry. You can also, if you want to go into a much deeper search, you can subscribe. You can subscribe for $25 a month to Publishers Marketplace. And what I advise, you can cancel anytime. So my advice is subscribe for 1 month and go in there and really search out all the different deals. And you can search for your type of book, your genre, and look for, well, what agents made a sale. And it tells you, it uses categories, not exact numbers, but it tells you, was it a nice deal, a very nice deal, a good deal? And that tells you how much money, that the author got for that book. So next, look at books by other authors who write similar books to yours. I don't think I've ever seen a book where in the acknowledgments the author didn't thank their agent. So then add that list, add those agents to your list. Once you get a list together of potential agents, look at their websites, look at their social media, Google them, see if they've written any articles. If there's a conference you can go to that they're speaking at, go. You might have a chance to pitch them, or you might just run into them in the elevator. But it's an opportunity, at least, to hear them speak, see what they're like in person. And give some thought. Who do you want as an agent? Do you want an agent who's in New York City? Does that matter to you? Or doesn't geography matter? I mean, do you want a big agency? Do you want to try to get a really hotshot big agent and you be a small client, or do you want to go sign with somebody who's up and coming or has a small agency and you'll be a bigger client? Find out what type of relationship they have. Are they editorial? Some agents will revise your book and get really down in the nitty-gritty, hands-on. Others see their job is just to send it out. What style works for you? How do they what's their communication style? And I saw on Twitter not too long ago, there was an agent on there who was just ranting about the fact that someone she works with sent her an email at 1:00 in the morning on a Friday.
Oh, I remember that.
And remember, did you see that? And I'm thinking, I don't think I'd want to work with that person. I mean, it's, somebody, because I tend to, I'll get something off my desk and I'll send it off at midnight. Doesn't mean I think my agent's there reading it at midnight. It means it'll be there in the morning. Mm-hmm. So think about that kind of thing, because you're going to be working with this person. So you got your list together. Well, something else that's really important is there's another website called Predators and Editors, and they're on Facebook too. And what they have is they will list like scammers, and there are reviews there. You can look up and go to Absolute Right Water Cooler, and you can look at what people have said about agents that they left. I had an agent who seemed wonderful once. Before I got my current agent, I met this agent. She was from Hollywood. She was from out in LA. She was at this conference. She said, she was really great to hang around with. I sent her my book. She got back to me. I love it. I love it. It's going to be a great movie. I can see the casting already. Sign with me. Yeah, I went, but then I looked into her a little more and found out she told everybody that. And then I looked on Publishers Marketplace, and she only had like 3 sales, and they were all for the same author, and they were all to a place where you don't even need an agent to sell. And so I did. Fortunately, I didn't sign with her, but you need to do that. You need to check those things out. And finally, put together a query letter, personalize it. I mean, don't send out, a batch of 50 form letters. You need to tell this agent, you've researched them now. You saw in Publishers Marketplace that they just made a sale. Put that in your letter. Congratulations on the recent sale you made. I have a book that's in the same genre, blah, blah, blah. I mean, make sure that there's a reason why they think that you're a good fit to work with them. What I did when I started my agent search is I started a spreadsheet. I would send out 5 queries at a time. And when one came back as a rejection, I would send out another. So I always had something in motion. Also, look at most agents. You can find out how soon they think they'll get back in response to either a query or to when they ask you for a partial. Put that on your spreadsheet, but double it. If they say they're going to be back, get back to people in 2 months, put 4 months on your spreadsheet. And if you haven't heard from them, follow up. And have something like I did when I told my agent, oh, I won a writing contest. Try to have something that you can put in there as a reason for following up too. Or it can just be, hey, I just saw you listed another sale for you listed in Publishers Marketplace. And again, don't be the person, overall, don't be the person who gets a request and then does their research. I mean, I cringe when I see people on like social media saying, oh, I just got a request from this agent. Does anybody know anything about her? Like what she represents? I'm like, how is she making a request to you? You must have queried her and she's now looked at your stuff and she's, making an offer to you and you don't even know who she is. So don't do that. Do your research before you query. Final word of advice, expect this to take you at least a year. It's not a fast thing. And you want the right agent. Having a bad agent for you or an agent that's a bad fit for you is worse than having no agent at all. Sorry, I went on so long. I just love that topic.
I will plug Jane here. I did her advice and I have an agent now, so she knows what she's talking about.
Yes.
Let me go ahead and move on. We have some more interesting questions, and I think a lot of the audience right now is going to really be interested in what you guys have to say about this one. Will an agent look at a book that's published on Wattpad? Does anyone have anything they want to jump in with? Tamara, you look interested.
No, I'm going to let Idris take it first because I think we have a counterpoint here. So.
Come on. All right. Come on.
It's gonna vary. Well, the first thing to understand about the industry is one, it's insular. 2, it's very old fashioned. It's changing, but it's changing very slowly. And Wattpad builds itself as a disruptor, and in some ways, especially now as it's changing, the industry is sort of embracing it, and then other ways very much not. So there are agents who look at Wattpad and sneer at it. I mean, let's say what it is, because it has the reputation it has developed wrongly or rightly as a place where the writing isn't necessarily good. It's full of fan fiction, things that aren't marketable. So there are some agents who will look at anything you put on Wattpad, one, especially if it didn't become popular, as you've thrown it away. And then there are other people, and it's going to vary. You're going to talk to different agents and get very different takes. And some will say, okay, well, no one's seen it. That's fine. I can work with this. This story is fine. And my experience is a little bit different. I write a lot. I mean, that's the first thing to understand. So I have a lot of stories that are on Wattpad or have been on Wattpad. And then I have an entire style of stories that's never been online. I got my agent with things that weren't online, but she approached me because of things that were. She's never said, I don't want the things you've posted. So my experience has been a little different than a lot of people's, but I know what's going to happen now. Okay. I know what they're going to say. So, generally speaking, do not put your final draft online and expect to be able to publish it at a traditional publisher. That's my take on that. Take it away, ladies. I know where this is.
No, I would agree with your last statement. I personally, and I'm speaking from a romance perspective here. I can't speak for any other genre, so I'm just speaking for romance. Romance is obviously the biggest genre. There are tons of people writing romance. If you have a book on Wattpad and an agent has any flaw, or there's any possible downside to it, an editor could just say, no, we don't want it. I personally would not query with a book that has been on Wattpad. I would query with a fresh book. That's just how I feel. And that's the agents I've had have said the same thing. Now, if you have a book that's on Wattpad and you get invited to paid, or you are, you get picked up by Wattpad books, like I have, certainly, absolutely, your agent can negotiate that contract without a problem. And if you were to get picked up by Wattpad books, you could go to an agent and say, I have a book offer from Wattpad books. Will you represent me? And that's perfectly legitimate. But to take a book, no matter how good, no matter how many reads, and try to query that, I personally would not. Now, if you have a book and it has tons of reads and you're querying something fresh, I would absolutely say, I have a book on my other book on Wattpad has 5 million reads, just to show that you can garner a readership and that you're connecting with fans and that you have a fan base. So I think that's all legitimate. But at the very least, and especially possibly in other genres, I would definitely not put your final draft on Wattpad if you're planning on querying it. But I probably would not put any draft on Wattpad if you're planning on querying it for the traditional market. That's my view.
Fair enough. Jane, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I agree with what Tamara said on that. I won't put anything on Wattpad if I'm going to query it. I'm very specific about what I write. When I put something on Wattpad, I wrote it for Wattpad. I have a serial on Radish. I wrote it for Radish, and I have work that my agent is shopping that is targeted at traditional publishers. And yes, use it. I mean, one of the things I use would use in trying to get an agent would be, I have a book on Wattpad that has, X number of reads. If you have a high number of reads, yes, do that. But not to pitch that book. Because another, final point on that too is, everybody in the industry always wants something that's fresh. So even setting aside the point of, well, is it going to be considered published already and do they not want it? They want something fresh. Reality is that a lot of stuff we're writing isn't fresh. We've been working on it for 5 years, maybe. Yeah. But I mean, I remember I have a thriller that I sent to my agent, and she was like, oh, you know what? If only you had had this idea and written this 10 years ago, I could have sold it, but I just don't think the market's right for it now. I had never told her, so I hope she's not watching, that I started writing that book 10 years ago, and it took me 10 years to write it. But it does. I mean, if something's been on Wattpad, I mean, you can look on Wattpad and you can see when it was first posted, and they're not going to think it's fresh. They don't want something that's been around for a long time. So I'd say no. Put things on Wattpad, put them on Wattpad. If you want to go, but when you're trying to get an agent, I wouldn't try to get I wouldn't lead with, I want you to represent my book that's been on Wattpad for 3 years. that's not the thing. Bring it up down the road. Once you have an agent, you can have that conversation. Start with, I have this fresh new I got this fresh new idea, and I have this completed 70,000 word book or 100,000 word book, and lead with that. And by the way, I already have a following on Wattpad for one of my other books. That's what
I mean, yeah, it's just like self-publishing. If you self-publish a book, you can't then later query that book. Now, there are instances where self-published books have gotten so big that publishers have come to them, but trust me, you will know when that happens. I have tried to query a book that has been self-published, and despite, awards, lots of reads, whatever, it doesn't work. It has to be really out of the stratosphere in order for publishers to pick up a previously published book. So Wattpad is considered in many ways previously published, at least in romance.
Right. Yeah, when you have such a... Sorry, go ahead, Serena.
No, I just said sure. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, definitely, because there's so much variety that agents and publishers can be extra picky in romance. Whereas if you're in something, I don't know, maybe literary fiction or something that's less populated, you might be able to get away with it if it's just really unusual or very different. I've definitely had stories that have been on Wattpad that my agent fell in love with. Obviously, as soon as she falls in love with it, you take it down, like you get it out of the public eye. All the better if it hasn't gotten attention yet. And I definitely have stories like Jane where I've been working on it a very long time, but I've never shown it to anyone. And then I handed it to my agent. She's like, "Oh my God, I love this. It's so timely." And I'm like, "Is it?" And I'm like, "Sounds great." And then we keep moving. The agent doesn't need to know everything. Yeah, so I absolutely agree. And I guess agreeing with both of you, I can't believe y'all's convinced me. That don't expect you're going to be the exception. Doesn't mean don't work towards being the exception, but don't expect that an industry that's quite so stuck in its ways is going to bend just for you, because unfortunately that's not often likely. So.
Fair enough. I think this next one will go pretty quick, and then we might have time for one or two of the Q&A audience questions. So, but this one I do want to cover just real quick. What should your expectations be once you've signed with an agent? How often will they communicate with you?
Oh, can I?
And that might be different for each of you. Just go.
Okay, so really quick. You're in a partnership. So from the beginning, actually before you sign even, talk to them about what you can expect from them, what it is you're looking for in an agent relationship. How much do you want to know about the submission process? Again, like I believe Jane mentioned, are they editorial? Are they hands-off? How often are you going to touch base about work you're working on? How much and how often do you want to know about the submission process? Because some people only want to know when things are going well. Other people want to know everything, every rejection, every acceptance, every time things get to acquisitions or what have you. So do your research so that you know what's best for you, because every writer is different, wants different things, feels safe and secure in different kinds of a relationship with an agent, and ask for that. And if it's not working, either communicate that, we need to change something, or really think about whether that agent relationship is good for you.
That was really well said.
Oh, I only have contact with my agent when we're on submission and she has something to tell me. My agent actually picks up the phone and calls me, which I really appreciate. Like, she just calls and says, "Here's the situation," and I appreciate that. It's very much a business relationship, and I am very appreciative that she's very direct, and there's not a lot of chit chat, but for me that works. But she also does editorial. When I send her a submission, she'll send me her feedback on the book, and she'll even say, like, if you're looking for XYZ publisher, they look for ABC. So why don't you put that in on chapter 1? And so I do, because she knows what they're looking for. So I listen to her. She has really good judgment. She's a great agent. She's a well-known agent. I follow her lead.
Nice. Anything else, Jane? Or are you guys ready to view an agreement? Or
I think we're all in agreement. I think it's an issue of just having the right expectations, and just back again to the research, know how your agent is going to communicate with you. Is it going to be frequent or infrequent? It reminds me of that. I think it was that old there was an old movie years ago, Annie Hall, and I think it was, and the couple is at a therapist, and you see the woman, and she says, "Oh, it's horrible. It's like we have sex constantly, like 3 times a week, and it's too much." And then it flips to the man talking to his therapist, and he's like, "It's absolutely horrible. We never have sex. I mean, only 3 times a week." So it's like different expectations. And I've heard authors say, I never hear from my agent, and I find out they hear from their agent every month. I hear from my agent when there's a sale, So it's just what you expect.
Yeah. Communicate your needs, okay? Like, seriously, it's so important. You'll be so much happier.
Right. So know before you go into it, guys. Mm-hmm. All right, we've got a couple interesting ones from the audience. So I'm going to start with this one. I think it's going to be interesting for a lot of you. Do we need an agent if signed with Wattpad under the Stars program, or is it mainly just for traditional publishing? Idris, okay. You want to start that?
Yeah. Yes.
I knew it.
No, look, I'm just going to say it. Any publisher under capitalism is out for themselves. They may be here for you too. They might want the best for you, or at least nominally they want that. But any contract I have ever read, even by people I like, has things in it that are not in my best interest. And especially when you're starting out, you're not going to recognize that language. You'd either need an agent or you need a lawyer. And an agent is generally cheaper. So it takes longer to get, maybe. Sorry, Jane, but it's cheaper. Or you need a Jane. So yes, I think even with Wattpad, I can't promise they're going to negotiate with you. I think I got lucky in that. But I think it is in your best interest with anyone you're working with, including Wattpad, books, studios, the whole 9 yards, to have someone knowledgeable look at your contracts and at the very least inform you of what it actually says so that you aren't flying blind. So
yeah, yes. I think that's a universal agreement for this panel here. And it actually pairs extremely well with another question we had that I'm going to direct at Jane. Not to pick on you, but you're going to like this one. Do you recommend getting a lawyer as well as an agent?
Well, it depends on what kind of resources your agency has. I mean, and how familiar they are with contracts. I mean, I signed some years ago with my agency, and they had an in-house lawyer, at that time. So didn't need someone separately. I would say typically, if you have an agent and they understand contracts and they can explain it to you, then you don't need to also have a lawyer. An agent would be fine. There have been a few over the years, literary agents that are also literary attorneys, and some of them you could hire just on an ad hoc basis, just to review a contract for you. Because remember, and if you hire a lawyer, I mean, you're not establishing necessarily a long-term relationship with that lawyer. You're just hiring a lawyer to review that one particular contract. Because, and like Idris said, it may not be negotiable, but that's no reason not to have it reviewed, because you need to understand what you're getting and what you're giving up, and not later be totally surprised and say, wait, you mean I can't do an audiobook, or do you mean I can't do this or that? I've assigned away all those rights, or find out, what is this? What's this clause mean that says they have right of first refusal on my future books? You need to know those sorts of things. So no, you don't need an agent and a lawyer, but you need one of them at least to read your contract.
I think it says something that, okay, so Jane is a lawyer, and she has given me we've had informal discussions about my contracts. I also have an agent. I've also been a journalist for 30 years, and I've done written a lot about court cases. I can make my way around a legal document. But the fact that Jane and I also have agents, the fact that Jane has agents, even though she can read contracts probably better than probably half the agents out there, the fact that she has an agent, I think, tells you what you need to know about having an agent, that you need one.
Yeah.
Very much agree with that. All right. Let me get another one out here because I know this one. We have so many. Wattpad is not just North America. We have all of our international family here. And so we're getting a lot of, can you search for an agent internationally? Does it have to be from your own country?
It doesn't can I?
It's probably a tricky question. Yeah, go ahead and start for us.
Yeah, you can actually do it. I've interviewed a lot of different authors for PW's Publishers Weekly, and it's not uncommon for authors to have agents in the different territories where they're represented. So let's say I know someone who works in South Africa, and he has an agent, for that territory, but he also is being published. They've done a sale in the U.S., so they also have a U.S. agent. And sometimes people who are from the UK may have a UK agent and a US agent. It really depends on where they're hoping to see their work sell. So yeah, you can search for agents in different places. I do recommend getting an agent where you are specifically as well. In addition to, if you're interested in publishing in the US, get an agent in the US, but they are separate processes too. So yeah.
Fair enough. Anything to add to that, ladies?
That's something too that goes back to doing your research,
Mhm.
because when you're approaching agents, find out, do you just from the agent, well, do you represent, foreign sales, or, where is it a problem if I'm in Brazil and you're in Australia? I mean, is it, find out
Right.
from them what they do and how narrow or broad their representation is, and whether they work with agents, and whether they have a relationship already. If you're looking at sales internationally, does the agent you're talking to have a relationship with agents in other countries that they work with? And find out the answers to those things up front, and it's part of thinking through, where do you want to publish?
Yep.
Sure. That is nearly the end for us. Did any of the panelists have any closing words on agents in business?
Yeah, I love talking. So let me try to take a whack at this. There's a lot of different ways to research agents. A lot of different ways to get them. There's very traditional querying, but also and there's also pitch events. That's a much more recent advent, but they're a fun way to meet people. I got my really first big interest from like Carina Pitch, which is an imprint. Carina Press is an imprint of Harlequin. So there's a lot of different pitch events for publishers and agents. Those are fantastic ways to even just test the waters to see if agents are interested, and you kind of get to test a lot of different agents at once. But going back to Jane's point, if someone who bills themselves as an agent says, hey, I want to see this work, please do your research. Not all agents are created equal. Not everyone who puts out, a sign that says, hey, I'm an agent is one, or even if they are, they're not necessarily a good one. You can't just go by their agency, because there's some very, very well named fakers out there, or very dangerous people who can hurt your career and your work, and it's not worth it. So research.
I think the thing I want everyone to come away with is that you should never pay an agent. If an agent asks you for money, run. Money flows to the author. You should never pay an agent for a submission fee. You should never pay an agent to sign a contract. Your agent gets a percentage of your royalties, and that's it. You should not pay an agent. If an agent says, if somebody says, I want to represent you, and it's a $50 submission fee,
that's just not how it works.
No, the agent will spell out in the contract how they get paid. Generally, it's 15%. Generally, I think that's the industry standard, is 15%, and they get 15% of your royalties, 15% of your advances, 15% of your options, whatever, but it will spell it out in the contract, and they will not ask for money up front. Do not pay money up front.
All right.
If there's any questions if you had a question and we didn't get to it, just want to let everybody know that in 15 minutes, I'll be doing my meet and greet. So you're welcome to come over and, keep on asking questions. And Idris and Tamara, you're welcome to join me over in my meet and greet if you don't have something else on your schedule and you want to,
all right.
we'll have more questions about agents.
Right. And I think that's about it for our panel. We are starting to run over and we're going to get yelled at for that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I do want to mention that the panel after this one is The Lost Age, How New Adult Fiction Thrives Outside of Traditional Publishing. So if that sounds interesting, you should definitely stick around. Otherwise, I hope you're enjoying your convention. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.